Arkansas Attorney General recently rejected the name and ballot title that would enshrine the Freedom of Information Act into the Arkansas state constitution. Here to talk about that with us today is law professor and member of the Arkansas Citizens for Transparency Group, Robert Steinbuch. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Jenny, great to be with you as always.
You know, we've had you on multiple times to talk about this, what the work that the group is doing. We've been covering the FOIA issue for quite some time, and you had a feeling that this would happen. We have the AG's opinion now. We received it not just a few days ago. Walk us through the opinion and give us your take on it.
Yeah, I must be Karnak the Magnificent in my ability to foresee what Tim Griffin was going to do, or someone who hasn't been sleeping during Tim Griffin's service as the Attorney General. He's obviously politicized that role entirely, and it's really unfortunate. There are a lot of takeaways. The two big takeaways that I will start with are, he says he doesn't know what the word transparency means. Okay. We did a bunch of town halls throughout the state, and we got lots of great questions from citizens throughout the state. And we modified repeatedly what we were producing. And what we were producing was always designed to be a reflection of the people's will. And so we were constantly updating it based on their comments. Not one person, Ginny, not one person said, hey, what's transparency mean? But to show you the folly of Tim Griffin's position, he says, on the one hand, I don't know what transparency means, but that seems like it is a political term, a politically partisan term. That's what he said in his letter. So he doesn't know what it means, but it's nonetheless partisan. How exactly does that work?
Yeah, I saw the press release that the Transparency Group put out and said that the group was perplexed by that. It seems like it's either one or the other. Either you know what the word means and therefore it's partisan, or you don't know what.
Not only that, Ginny, Tim Griffin has run for office as a Republican. So he signed on, of course, to the Republican platform. And there's a plank in the platform saying that we support transparency with no definition of the word.
Yeah. Just
saying we support transparency. So he signed on to that platform, but now doesn't understand what he signed on to? Curious, isn't it?
The other thing that I thought was interesting that you, as the Arkansas Transparency Group, also stated in response to the opinion, with it being a partisan issue, is what party opposes transparency?
Well, that was the other thing, right?
Yeah.
We had folks, as you know, you were in the Capitol nearly round the clock during the special session regarding David Ray's second attempt to undermine the Freedom of Information Act. And you saw all the folks testifying against David Ray's bill. And they were on the left, they were on the right, and they were in the middle. We had the sort of self-described patriot types, and we had people there with purple dyed hair. Generally, those folks are on the left, right? All right. And all of them testified to a person against David Ray's FOIA killing bill. I'll say this also, I think this is rather interesting. So the opinion from the Attorney General at the very last paragraph says that the opinion is drafted by one of his staffers, I believe a deputy. That same deputy was sent by Tim Griffin to testify in favor of David Ray's bill when he first introduced it during the general session. That bill was so poorly drafted, by the way, that it actually would have eliminated the application of the FOIA to local and county government, and they didn't even realize it. Yeah. So the Attorney General's testifying in favor of a bill that would have eliminated the application of the FOIA to most government, basically, and not even realizing it. His deputy, Tim Griffin's deputy, who wrote this opinion, sat side by side, hand in hand with David Ray in favor of that bill. So how can you have the person that you, Tim Griffin, sent to testify in favor of a bill now judge the very people's ballot initiative that would do the opposite? Rather than gut the FOIA, it would protect the FOIA. It's just inappropriate.
Well, and definitely a conflict of interest, it would seem, and highly politicized.
The whole process is politicized. Unfortunately, Tim Griffin has entirely politicized the office of the Attorney General, and that's unfortunate. And I've said it before on your show, and I will repeat it here today. Tim Griffin's not fit for that office.
You know, Robert, I've heard people mention you. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring?
Well, I'll say this. I think it is appropriate that we, and I didn't come up with this idea. Someone posted this recently. You probably saw it on Facebook. I think it's time for those true committed conservative Arkansans to come up with someone to primary Tim Griffin during the next election.
Something else that I want to talk to you about, he also talked about the application, and he reviewed the text of the proposed constitutional amendment. Is that within his purview with this opinion? Is that something that he should be doing?
No, as your question aptly suggests, right? His job is to review the name and the ballot title. Where did the text come from? So, needless to say, the Attorney General has a rather grand view of his authority, and this is just another example of it.
One thing that I think is interesting, there are 3 people on the Arkansas Citizens for Transparency group that are part of the AG's FOIA working group.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So the proposal from the Arkansas Citizens for Transparency group was given over to the Attorney General's office. 3 members of our group are on Tim Griffin's non-working FOIA group. And he's just said that almost half of his non-working FOIA group doesn't know how to write something regarding the FOIA that would be put on the ballot. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. And by the way, who's the one who apparently does know how to write such a thing? One of his 2 employees that he put on his non-working FOIA group, who sit with David Ray and his co-sponsor of the bill designed to gut the FOIA. So needless to say, it's really, his non-working FOIA group seems to me to be collapsing under its own weight.
I was listening to Dave Ellswick this morning. You were on there, and then they had he had Jennifer Standifer, who helped draft this as well. And you both did just a phenomenal job talking about this. One thing that she said that I thought was brilliant, she talked about the 4 branches, and she said the first branch is the people. And she said part of our job in drafting this, she said, was not just getting the ballot title right for the people, but it's also protecting the people's power to legislate. And then the group just went on to talk about the overreach and just, she also talked about how a lot of times we look at the AG, he's just this anointed lawyer of all lawyers for the state, and that his opinion is like the end all. But that's not necessarily the case, especially when you look at the text of this opinion. And, you know, some lawyers would argue that it's not even good law. It's and it could potentially be challenged in court. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, you're entirely correct. Jennifer is one of the brightest attorneys I've ever met. She used to work for the Bureau of Legislative Research, who are the folks that write laws. Yeah. And so she's amongst us, right? There are the 3 members who are on Tim's non-working FOIA group. In addition, we have Jennifer, who used to work for the Bureau of Legislative Research, but apparently we don't know how to write something to be put on the ballot. Or let me just throw out, who knows, some random alternative explanation. Oh, that the Attorney General's office has become politicized and therefore his efforts have nothing to do with the merits. That's just one random thought. I hope you picked up on the sarcasm.
We did.
Yeah. It wasn't too subtle, was it? I'm rarely accused of being subtle, by the way, Ginny. She's exactly right. He is pulling a Heisman on the people's right to have something on the ballot. And he's interfering with the democratic process. And that's the problem here, right? You asked earlier, how is FOIA a partisan issue? Is it the left that's against FOIA? No. Is it the right that's against FOIA? No. Is it the middle that's against FOIA? No. Here's where the divide is. It's the people versus the plutocrats. And the plutocrats don't like to have their actions reviewed.
Yeah.
And who's running interference for the plutocrats? Tim Griffin.
Not to go down, not to digress too much, but there was a lot going on at the RPA winter meeting. You were there. We've written about it. We have FOIA. We have the Buffalo River. We have other issues. And one might suggest that right now, the Arkansas GOP particularly has an issue with government transparency and accountability. Or maybe they don't, but that's certainly the perception right now. What would you say to that? And how can they fix that perception?
Yeah, look, you fix the perception by fixing the substance. And the substance is you don't propose, like David Ray did, bills repeatedly to entirely undermine transparency. You don't introduce a bill a couple few days before the end of session, in which you introduce it on a Monday, you skip the FOIA task force on a Tuesday, and you run it in committee on a Wednesday, all in an effort to not be transparent. About what?
Yeah.
Transparency law.
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up.
Has Griffin or anyone from his FOIA working group at any point in time reached out to you all who were working on this amendment, just in an effort to work through it, to collaborate, to hear how you all were working through it? Did any of that happen? Did that happen at any moment?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
No.
What are the next steps that you see?
So there are three possibilities, two, and then a combination of the two. One is we rewrite our proposal and resubmit it. Two is we go straight to litigation. And three is we do both. We rewrite our proposal and go straight to litigation at the same time. And I'm in favor of anyone that has litigation involved in it, needless to say. Why? Because I don't deal well with despots, and I go to the court system to ameliorate that problem.
Well, we will continue to watch this. This is such an important issue, not only for the state of Arkansas. This is important to Conduit, and it is one that we will certainly have our eye on in the coming weeks. Robert, anything else you want to watch? You want to say?
Well, I'll just mention on that very point. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Conduit, and I come all the time on your wonderful show. But to prove the substance behind that, Conduit has been giving out these awards to legislators for good acts. And after all of this newly found behavior by alleged conservatives on Freedom of Information Act, Conduit changed how it's evaluating legislators and will be highlighting transparency as a key component, because it's sort of like nobody ever thought it was going to be an issue. Why rank something that's not an issue?
Never in our wildest dreams did we think that our conservatives would be the ones attacking the Sunshine Law. And so if we don't have transparency, we don't have anything else. We are not able to see the corruption that's involved on the government level. And so, yes, moving forward, the Freedom of Information Act, government transparency and accountability will be one of the most weighted, scored issues in our scorecard moving forward. So it is one to watch.
Indeed.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Jenny.